I'm the first to admit that Maine is not the state for everybody, so let's dig into why I choose to live here. By the way, my name's Margaret. My dad, Michael, and I make videos to educate you about living in the southern Maine area. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out. Give us a call, shoot us a text, send an email, schedule a Zoom call. All of our information is down below, as well as some free downloadable resources for you to use as well. So the first reason I choose to live in Maine is the fact that it's a really great place to grow up. I'm originally from Maine, and honestly, not a lot of people choose to actually stay in the area, or not a lot of younger people choose to stay in the area. I will say a lot of people move away and come back. As for people who stay here right out of college, the numbers are definitely not as high as neighboring states or really other states in the country. And we've dug into this in other videos, but the main reason is basically job opportunities depending on what fields you work in. It's definitely in your interest to go to an area like Boston, or maybe even go into Portland if you're staying in Maine, or travel to other areas depending on what it is you're looking to do for work. A lot of people struggle to find that in Maine, as certain areas are incredibly rural. But overall, Maine is a great place to grow up. I think a lot of people, even if they choose to move away, a lot of people end up coming back, and a lot of people will agree and say that it is a great place to grow up. There's a million reasons for this. It's very safe. There's a lot of natural beauty in the state. The education is very good in the area, kind of in New England in general. And all in all, there's an awesome sense of culture and community for the most part that I think a lot of people enjoy, and I certainly did as well. For me personally, I originally grew up living about 20-25 minutes from the coast. I always enjoyed going to the beach growing up. I ended up moving to a coastal town when I was in very late elementary school, early middle school, and that's kind of where I grew up for the most part, graduated from. I enjoyed being in a town so close to the ocean, only about an hour and a half from the White Mountains, only about an hour and a half from Boston. I think there's a bit of a misconception about Maine that it's really rural and that you're very secluded from the rest of society, if you will. It's definitely not the case. For where I am personally, Portland's only about 40 minutes north of me. Boston's about an hour, hour and a half, depending on the day. And fortunately, the state has areas that are urban, a lot of suburban areas, and definitely a lot of rural areas as you travel more north in the state. There really is a little bit for everyone here. My second reason for why I live in Maine is the quality of life. Now, obviously, we just touched on this a little bit, but Maine, generally speaking, has a slower pace of life, and a lot of people I know that come and visit the area, this is what they love about it. Things are not necessarily moving. There's not really the hustle and bustle of like a super large city, though obviously you could go to Portland, you could go to Portsmouth, you could go to Boston and definitely experience that if that's what you're looking for. But generally speaking, the reason why a lot of people come to Maine is because it has a slower pace of life, and you can kind of be more in touch with your surroundings and nature. And I think that's one of the things that makes the state so special, is the fact that it feels a lot more relaxed here in a lot of areas. In addition to that, community and culture. It's a very clean state. We have really clean air for the most part. It's very safe. And like I said before, there are areas of the state that are more urban. There are areas that are suburban. There are areas that are really rural. So really, depending on where you're moving in the state, there is a little bit for everybody. Depending on where you're moving in the state, there is a little bit for everybody. And really, everybody can kind of find an area that they enjoy. Generally speaking, to keep things simple, if you live in, I would say, what people refer to as southern Maine, a lot of people are referring to York County, but I would say most people, when they're talking about southern Maine, they're not really talking about south of the state, of the middle of the state. They're really talking about like the greater Portland area, closer to the coast where it's more populated. And then northern Maine is significantly more rural. If you go up into the northernmost county in the state, it's incredibly rural. It's a huge, huge county. That's where like all of the farms are, all the potatoes are. But there's really a lot of different ways of life here in Maine, and really everybody can kind of find something that they like. If you want to be out in the middle of nowhere, you can certainly do that. If you want to be in a coastal area that's not super populated, you can find that. Or if you want to live in a highly populated coastal area, we have that as well. I think a combination of being able to find something that you like that, you know, the fact that the state's really clean, it has a slower pace of life, it's very safe, but we are still fairly close to some larger cities. It creates this awesome atmosphere of people who don't really want to be directly in the city. They don't want to have to deal with traffic necessarily every day, but that stuff is definitely commutable to. It's drivable to, or if you're working down in Boston, you could certainly take the train into work if you live close enough to the train stations. It's really a great place for people who are looking to get away from the city and slow things down a little bit. And my third and final reason for why I live in Maine is the natural beauty of the state. This is a huge reason for why I love living here. I personally live very close to the coast, and that's a really important factor in my life. I love visiting the ocean, whether I'm going to the beach or not. I don't actually even really like going to the beach in the summertime. Sunbathing, not my thing. I sunburn incredibly easily. But being able to go to the ocean, being able to wake up and watch the sunrise and really embrace the natural beauty of the state and the ocean and everything around you, I think is an awesome, awesome factor to living in Maine. And like I said, the White Mountains of New Hampshire are only an hour, hour and a half away, depending on where you are. If you want to go to the mountains, if you want to go hiking, that's not too far. If you want to go up to Mount Katahdin, that's, for me, it's a couple of hours, but you could certainly do that depending on where you live in the state. Maine has a huge coastline, so whether you want to be in touristy southern Maine, you can do that. If you want to enjoy the Rocky Coast up in northern Maine, you can obviously do that as well. Maine has an awesome combination of flatland, mountains. We have an awesome coastline. Certain areas, like in southern Maine, we have sandy beaches, but we also have a rockier coastline in certain areas where there aren't any beaches. Maine, fortunately, also experiences all 4 seasons, so spring, summer, fall, winter. We do get winters that are generally, I want to say, about 10 to 15 degrees. In the summer, it'll get up to like 80, 85 degrees. So you get to experience what it's like when it's really cold and when it's, really hot by Maine standards. You get to watch the leaves change color in the fall and fall off the trees. It really is quite a sight. And I know a few people that grew up in New England, and that is one of the biggest things that they miss, is missing the seasons changing. It's a really beautiful thing to watch, kind of goes along with the natural beauty of the state. And then in addition to that, the wildlife in Maine as well. I know in certain areas of the country, it's not quite as common to see, deer or other animals, walking around in your backyard, but that's very common in Maine. I think a lot of people really enjoy having a lot of wildlife nearby. And being so close to the coast, you get to see seals, lobster, other small fish, and you really get to embrace, all of the wildlife, all of the natural beauty of the state, and I would absolutely miss that if I didn't live in the area. All in all, I could probably keep going on about the millions of reasons why I choose to live in Maine. I think it's a great place to grow up and raise a family. I think the quality of life here is better than a lot of states in the country, and we have awesome, awesome natural beauty that comes along with living in Maine. It has a slower pace of life, but you're still fairly connected and close to larger cities, but you're definitely still a good hour away from them in most areas. So the state has a lot to offer, and if you're considering moving to the area, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. And again, my name's Margaret. If you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out. Give us a call, shoot us a text, send an email, schedule a Zoom call. All of our information is down below, as well as those free downloadable resources for you to use as well. And we'll see you next time.